Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm gonna be reacting to a video called Why Europe Doesn't Build Skyscrapers. So this looks like very interesting. I hadn't really thought of this. I think they're less common, but I do think that there are some cities that build it, but I don't know, maybe I'm totally in the wrong, and hopefully we're gonna be finding out like the historical and probably economical reasons. But let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
Why aren't there many skyscrapers in Europe? Despite being one of the most developed, densely populated and economically prosperous continents, Europe has surprisingly few skyscrapers, particularly when compared to Asia and North America. Of the 218 skyscrapers constructed on the continent to date, 66% of them are located in just 5 cities: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Moscow and Istanbul.
That's crazy.
So why have other major European cities not embraced the skyscraper? How do they thrive without the significant inner urban space and floor areas that these clever structures provide? And is everything about to change in our increasingly urbanized world?
They're like historical sites. Probably it's because they don't have the space, actually.
When skyscrapers first rose to prominence in the 19th century, first in Chicago and later in New York, many European cities were already firmly established, with grand historic buildings and public spaces that left little room for large new structures.
And they had already been developed.
Most of Europe's cities around that time were also more evenly zoned, and were not facing the high demand for floor space in key districts that typically drives high-rise development. Additionally, as the power and influence of North America began to grow, a cultural rivalry emerged between Americans who saw Europe's class system as outdated and Europeans who saw some American ideals as eroding traditions and the European way of life.
Well, yeah,
as a result, each continent became wary of adopting the other's concepts.
Oh, they wanted to have like a stark
difference.
difference.
Aimed to become the model for a new age, Europe sought to preserve its heritage. While this explains why skyscraper construction didn't initially catch on in Europe, it doesn't explain what has held the continent back since.
Now it's a cultural thing. Oh, what's the post-war? Of course, makes sense.
In the wake of the Second World War, many thought European cities would modernize and replicate the skyscrapers that were rising across North America.
I would think there was like emphasis on actually preserving the
in Western
cultural
Europe,
heritage.
where many cities lost landmark and historic structures, an overwhelming desire to restore what had been destroyed took hold.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
In addition, the lower population of Europe at that time meant that the demand for floor area that principally drives skyscraper construction wasn't there.
Of course, because everything
As a result,
was moving.
modest structures replaced buildings that could not be saved or restored. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, the expanding Soviet Union's rebuild effort consisted largely of mid-rise repetitive structures that sought to rehouse much of the population.
Yeah, I think that's the only, they have a very
It was during this time that Europe saw its first skyscrapers begin to rise, not in response to growth and prosperity, but in an effort by the Soviets to indicate their power and influence. By the start of the 21st century, attitudes around tall buildings were softening across the continent, as architectural trends moved away from box-like structures towards more unique designs. As such, Europe could witness a skyscraper boom in the decades ahead.
Oh, but that would be changed like all the landscape. I don't know if I like that.
However, with entire urban centres now being declared historically significant, and with the desire to retain as much culture and architecture as possible rightly holding strong up to the present day, the unique challenge facing future skyscraper construction in Europe is all to do with the past. If you enjoyed this video and would like to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, subscribe to the B1M.
Okay, it was historical and obviously, well, not that much economical. It was more like, I think, historical, maybe like cultural reason. I do not like the fact that they were like, well, you know, is this going to be like a simple, because in 2030, I think, like people are obviously, there's going to be more people in the world, like the population is going to grow. So there's going to be a need for, you know, to house all these people that are going to be living in the planet and, you know, specifically in Europe. So it's like I don't really know how to feel about that, because when I think about Europe, I think of like, usually like the towns are very, and the cities are very particular. They don't, again, when you see a city, like you can just, all the cities have like different feels, and obviously every city is different, and Europe is not the exception. Every city is going to be like very particular. It's going to have their own feel. But usually, as in when you, again, in the United States, like you can get the sense of like, oh, this is the United States. Although obviously every city has its own like spirit. I think that's the same or similar with Europe. But there's like a commonality between them all that you think, oh, it's European. And I do think the whole like historical, like the city centers, like all the downtowns, like I don't know, they have like such a particular like architecture, like all the historical actually like houses, and even maybe it's just like the facade, like maybe it's not just the house itself is maybe not that old, but they have an architecture that's very particular to them, and of course the little streets that are very tiny and narrow. And I don't know how to feel about like, wow, destroying that, like I don't really feel like that's a good idea. I do like that it was all because of like because of the war. Like there was, instead of like, oh, we because a lot of places, a lot of cities were obviously like they were destroyed. They were like, we have to do it again. And I do like the fact that instead of saying, well, we can just start over here, it's like, no, there was obviously an emphasis in preserving all of those like historical places that can still be preserved or even restored. Because obviously the war was a terrible thing to happen, and they do really understood like how dangerous, it's like the danger of that, of all of those like historical sites getting destroyed. It's obviously because they lived it, and because they lived it, they were like, wow, we should definitely, the emphasis should be in definitely preserving all these sites, because we know, because we've been very close, or they actually went through it of like, it was destroyed because of, a war that was terrible. So I do like that it was all like, and obviously it's just it's all in the cultural fabric after like going through something like that. It was always like people, not just like the governments or the policy. It's more like the people themselves were also like, yeah, we should preserve this because it's our heritage, and it's not just our heritage as Europeans, but it's our heritage also as a cultural, as humans, as just the human race. And I do like that was like probably like the whole reason why they were like, no, we should definitely like leave it as it is. And not just, the whole of like, let's not replicate like what was happening in Chicago or New York, because they wanted to be like very distinct and very different, which I think till this day, like it's still happening. Like obviously New York and the whole like city landscape of New York doesn't really look the same as Chicago, although again, there are some similarities, and of course it doesn't really look, it looks different from most places in Europe. And you can make the case of like, yes, you have like the financial districts in Europe that do really have skyscrapers or like this really tall buildings, like Frankfurt, London, and I think Paris. But just like, I like the fact that they're just like relegated to certain points, and still, again, they're very different. Like you wouldn't get to see like the financial district, I don't know, in Paris or whatever, and you would think, oh, that's New York. It's like, no, it's, again, they're very distinct, which I like, because I think each city and each country should have that. And I think for the most part, like it happens, because again, every city just by nature is gonna be different. But I do like the fact that it's like, specifically, they sort of like relegated to one place, and I think in the future, maybe that's what they should do. Like, it's not, we're demolishing all these houses and all these like older buildings, like maybe just put them there, to like designate an area and say, like build those skyscrapers there. Again, I know that it's just like, because Europe, like the actual cities, like they're very like they've been built for like hundreds of years, and everything's very narrow. It's tiny. Like you don't really have the space. I get it. It's like there's physically not enough space to like put all these people that are gonna live here in the future. So what's the solution? Well, obviously you have to like build a huge building with like 100 floors, and of course like that's the easy solution. But it's like, I think it would change like so much, and I don't really like it. It's like, yes, I get that there are some financial districts or some like companies that maybe should have it, because again, it's like big companies where am I going to put like all the people that work here? And it's like, yes, but they should again be put in like in a specific place and a specific part of town. And I think they should all follow along. I think when it comes to actual like residential buildings, I think it's where you can maybe have a little bit more of like leeway of where to put them. And I think it could be like the easy solution would be to like just like demolish this house, like this, you know, this neighborhood, for instance, where, I don't know, like how many people can live here? Like 1,000 people, and just like destroy that and build, you know, 4 skyscrapers, and like you're gonna be a lot. There's gonna be like there's a possibility that like 4,000 people can move here, and of course it's gonna be like the easy solution. But it's like, no, maybe the solution is that people should like not move to cities and maybe like go to somewhere else in Europe, go to other cities, or maybe just plain move out of Europe. I don't know. I just want to put it on the record that I think it would be such a shame to like for them to like actually change the whole situation. But obviously nobody knows, because again, it's something that's going to probably happen in the future. And I know that the construction these days obviously goes to like, yes, practically, everything's got to be practical, but also again, sustainability, which is a good thing. But again, even though they have like pretty interesting buildings that at least visually they look pretty weird, and apparently they're sustainable, and that's great. It's like they look, again, that's what I mean with that. It looks weird. Like I don't like that building. I don't think could be in New York. But at the same time, it's like I don't really like to like leave all the little like, I don't know. It's not townhouses, but it's just like little houses that they have in Europe. It's like, I don't know. And even the buildings, like even some buildings that are, but they're just like smaller buildings with just like 3 or 4 floors. I don't know. They're not that tall. They're just like little stuff that looks like houses, but I understand it's just like an apartment complex, but it looks like a bigger house, but it's not like this huge like skyscraper, which I agree. Like they mentioned in the video that they can look a little, I don't know, like soulless. It's like, yes, I agree. Like, because again, all things have this whole, you know, they have a charm, they have a particular way that they were built, and you can really do, like when you're seeing like something, you're seeing that building, you can really like look at the history and know the details, and I think it's just like very charming, and I think I personally prefer that. And instead of just like this glass building, I don't know, maybe it looks like, it reminds you maybe more of like an office building and not somewhere where people actually live. I don't know, but again, that's just like personal preference. Like some people are gonna find all these like glass buildings gorgeous and incredible. And I do agree, like it's an incredible feat of like engineering that we're able to build something like that. But it's like when you actually start to like visually, and what do you prefer? I know it's like, well, some people are going to prefer the whole like very modern, sleek look of like, yes, a bunch of skyscrapers, and other people are just going to prefer like the old charm of like all those like smaller buildings and houses, because again, not all of them are houses. Like some of them are apartment buildings. They're just like tinier. And of course, they're made out of bricks. They have other materials. Maybe someone would do a hybrid of like a big, like modern building, like a skyscraper, but instead of using like very modern materials, like glass and steel and all of that, maybe they should like use bricks or something and make it more historical. Like make it look a little bit older. I don't know. I know that's probably impossible and it probably look hideous, but I don't know, maybe someone could find a hybrid and, you know, maybe they can make it happen. You know, engineers and architects, I think, you know, of course they can make it happen. Like the sky's the limit with them. So maybe that's what they should do. But I think that in the future, like they pose some very interesting like questions of like what's going to happen in the future. And yes, and I think nobody knows. It's like, we'll have to wait and see. And hopefully they're going to be able to preserve it, because again, it should be, again, not just from Europeans. It's a whole of like historical sites for just humanity and the human race in general. So I'm like, no, they should definitely keep it like that. If they were voting, I would vote no, leave it as it is, and maybe like put some places, you know, designate some areas outside of town where you can just build your skyscrapers that are more like, they're more common. I think there can be probably a little bit, they're easier to replicate. But this was a very interesting video, and that was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye!